What up, guys? It's July 10th, and welcome to Q2 2022 earnings season. Okay, and we're going to go over some things that we have to have in mind for this earnings season that's going to kick off, which is going to be probably the most important earnings season of our life. Today, I know I say that often, but with things the way they are, I feel like this is such an important earnings season that we really have to pay attention. Okay, there's a lot of companies reporting, pretty much all of them, of course, but a lot of companies reporting early that are going to set the tone for earnings season. Okay, so we have to be prepared. We have to know which ones to listen to. Okay, and eco data that's coming out as well on top of those earnings. That's going to have a big effect on how the market moves, either positively or negatively. Okay, so before we get started, of course, please hit that like button, hit subscribe. Hopefully you learned something from these videos and we have some fun in the meantime. Okay, let's get to it. All right, guys, so these reminders about earnings data, I want to remind you guys of things that you have to keep in mind, especially if you're new. This will probably be very helpful on things that you have to know for earnings data and how earnings reports come out. Okay, so the first thing is know when your company reports earnings. That's fairly easy to know in an ironclad way. Okay, the best way for you to really know when they're going to report is by going to your company's investor relations site. So, for example, this week we have Pepsi reporting earnings. We can go to PepsiCo. I have it right here, investor relations, and pull up their investor relations site and look at their financial news section or their financial news link. And that is when they put that's where they put their announcements for earnings presentation. So here, let's see here, we have here second quarter financial results. That's 2022. That's what we need, July 12th. Okay, and it'll happen 6 a.m. So before the bell opens. So that's as simple as it gets to figuring out when your company reports earnings. You're also going to find some dates on your broker. So if you have Robinhood, Fidelity, E-Trade, Ameritrade, whatever it is, you're going to see probably a date somewhere on their website. But if your company hasn't posted it on their investor relations site, it's more than likely a kind of guesstimate by the broker as to where they're gonna when they're gonna report, because it's just based on prior reporting, quarters and kind of what their best estimate is as to when they report. But it is not ironclad. Okay, so this is the best way to find out when your company is going to actually report their numbers. Okay, now of course we're watching for EPS, revenue numbers, and guidance, forward guidance. So EPS, of course, earnings per share. That's a measure of profitability for the business. That's how much money they make for one share of the business. We have revenue. Revenue is how much company has in sales, total sales. And guidance, which is how well or bad or how flat is the company going to do in the next year or so, or in the next 6 months approximately, depending on how your company likes to do guidance. Remember, some companies don't give guidance, which is not good or not great depending on the circumstance. Some give too far guidance, some give too short guidance. So it just depends on the company how they like to formulate their guidance. But when it comes to guidance, this is going to be the most important part of this earnings season, is what your company is guiding for. Because if you have a stock in your company that reports guidance, let's say flat or a miss in guidance, meaning they're lowering their guidance, and the stock doesn't go down, that could be a very strong signal that your stock has bottomed. So keep an eye out for stocks that do not go down on these bad news, because stocks have moved down for so long. It could be that the price of these stocks have already priced in that set of bad news. So we're listening for new things, not things that we already know about the economy, about the business. We're listening for new things and to see how those things are going to propel the business to move forward, to get more sales, or things that are going to keep it, on the low end of that scale. Okay, now we're still focused on reading the earnings reports. That's on the investor relations site. As soon as they report their earnings, the time comes, you can just go to the investor relations site, the news section, and just hit refresh when you know they're doing it after the bell or before the bell. And you're going to see their earnings report. You're going to read all of it, because that's where they're telling you everything they want you to know about the prior quarter and about their year-over-year numbers. You're also going to listen to their conference call. That is also on the investor relations site. You have a link for that conference call on that earnings report. You probably want to pre-register for these conference calls if you can. Some companies have a limit of how many people can actually participate in their conference call. So I always like to pre-register to make sure I'm not bumped or I'm not able to get in and listen to the conference call. I do subscribe to Seeking Alpha, so I have transcripts of every single conference call of any company, any public company that I want to see. I prefer to listen to them and then to go back and read them again so I can kind of process the information, because it's extremely important that you don't miss any details of those calls. And of course, we want to read the 10Q statement. That's the quarterly statement that's filed, and the SEC link of your investor relations site. Okay, so enough of that for now. Let's move on and let's talk about the real earnings. Okay, so this is the calendar for this coming week starting tomorrow. So nothing interesting here on Monday that I can talk about. We of course have PepsiCo reporting on Tuesday before the bell, and this is a good business to listen to because it is easy to understand. It's sodas, Lay's potato chips, and some other products, secondary products out there for PepsiCo, and how the health of the world economy is doing, what Europe is doing, what China is doing, what the Middle East is doing, and the whole reaction of the supply chain from PepsiCo is going to be very, very important to know how their supply chain is doing. Also here in the U.S., of course, not to diminish that. But of course, on Tuesday, nothing else that I'm looking out for here. On Wednesday, we have Delta reporting. Okay, Delta is the health of travel in the U.S. These guys are very, very, very dependent on business travel. So if you're curious as to where about business travel, how it was impacted by lockdowns, and whether it's going to return to normal, you're going to listen to Delta's conference call. Okay, business travel is very profitable for them. So I'd be curious to see what they're saying about business travel, what percentage has returned versus 2019 and 2018 numbers, and whether they believe that some percentage may never return to travel, which I believe is highly likely. Okay, now Fastenal is another one that I like to listen to every quarter because it gives you the strength of construction, right? The strength of the home building and construction sector. So these guys, of course, do fasteners and other construction equipment, and that's used for buildings, of course. And when you listen to this conference call, you're going to listen to their CEO and what he thinks about the future and what he thinks is going to happen with construction, specifically with homes in the future. I think this is going to be a very interesting call, okay? Nothing else as far as these two. I'm not listening to these two, but I am going to pay attention to Consumer Price Index, okay? So CPI, everybody knows it, the measure of inflation. We're looking at the year-over-year numbers and the month-over-month numbers. Let's go over what the expectation is. So I like to use MarketWatch to tell me about the economic calendar and what's coming up week to week. And of course, we see CPI year-over-year, core CPI monthly, and core CPI year over year. So the Consumer Price Index, of course, you can go to the Labor Bureau statistics to look at CPI, and I'll show you guys here real quick. I'm here on Google, and I can put Consumer Price Index. Yep, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we'll be able to see Consumer Price Index here, and CPI publications, home CPI data. You can look at all the CPI data you want. We've gone over that before in prior videos. Okay, just wanted to let you guys know how easy it is to find these things and make sense of them. Now moving on to the real busy part of earnings season. We go Thursday with JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. Of course, JP Morgan is the giant bank that we all know that it is. It's one of the most valuable companies on the planet. And what's going to be important is for Jamie Dimon, the CEO, which is an excellent CEO, to give us a good kind of weather forecast of the economy. Okay, I want to hear about the strength of the consumer or the weakness of the consumer. I want to hear about credit lines, whether people are defaulting on those credit lines. I want to hear about mortgages. I want to hear about car loans. I want to hear about deposit accounts, savings accounts. I want to hear about all that to see what he says, because this is going to give you one of the best pictures as to the health of the economy in the U.S. Okay, of course, Morgan Stanley, a little bit of a different story because these guys are mostly like Wall Street type banks, and they do a lot of investing, a lot of playing around with the market. I'm pretty sure they're doing really well with the volatility the market has seen. I think Morgan Stanley is going to make a lot of money from this volatility. I think the price of Morgan Stanley is actually really good if you're interested in a financial stock that pays a first-class dividend. Morgan Stanley is the way to go. Okay, now moving on, we got Taiwan Semiconductor. If you own semiconductor stocks, you gotta listen to Taiwan Semiconductor. I want to hear about the supply chain. I want to hear about supply gluts instead of supply. What are we calling that? Supply shortages. I want to hear about supply gluts. Too many chips now in the system as opposed to too little of them, and what customer orders are looking like for chips, advanced or medium grade or low end chips. We want to hear about all that from Taiwan Semiconductor, okay? That impacts a huge sector of the economy, okay? Then Conagra usually doesn't report this early, but we have them reporting numbers very early, which I think is a good sign. Conagra here, and I wanted to kind of give you guys the link here, what it is. This is the Conagra website. It shows you here, these are all the brands of food, of all the products they have, all the SKUs they have, and there's a huge amount here of food products, food brands that they have. You have Slim Jim, Snack Pack. What is here? Let me see if I recognize something here. Mrs. Buttersworth, I recognize that one. Hunt's Ketchup, I recognize that one. Couple others here. I don't recognize many of them, but Orville Redenbacher, I recognize that one. Hunt, we talk about that. Slim Jim, Garden, and then the Healthy Choice. I recognize those guys. So very important for these guys to tell us the health of the consumer and how much in sales they actually have. Is it better than last year or is it worse than last year? I think these guys are going to have a great number as people stick to more grocery shopping than outdoor sort of eating, okay? Now moving on, I think Cintas is another interesting one, okay? We saw the latest jobs report that came out that was surprisingly strong on the amount of jobs that were added in the economy in the month of June. And we see here 372,000 jobs added in the month of June as opposed to the street's expectation of 250,000 only. So in this type of job market, I tend to believe, and I'm not exactly sure, but I tend to believe that most of these jobs are going to be in leisure and hospitality. And I think there was a chart out there. Let me try to see if I can pull that up. And here it is, okay? If we look at these charts, we got to see that Cintas can make really good money from things like leisure and hospitalities, things that require uniforms for businesses and their staffs, okay? Professional business services, healthcare, social assistance, that's uniform, okay? This is uniform. We have some uniform there, I believe, and then some uniform here as well and here. So when it comes to Cintas, I think that is a great stock, and they're going to have a great quarter coming up. And then back to the weekly here chart. Nothing else interests me for Thursday other than the PPI number, producer price index. That's another measure of inflation, sort of like the consumer price index. These two kind of go hand in hand. Okay, now Friday, we have the big banks reporting. We have Wells Fargo, Citi, we have US Bank, and BlackRock. This is an investment bank. This is more, not a traditional bank, but an investment bank. But again, just like JP Morgan, these guys are going to tell us about the health of credit, health of the consumer, and how they're spending. Okay, Progressive is one that I'm not interested in. I usually don't like commenting on insurance stocks. For obvious reasons, of course. But then other than that, we have some regional banks here that should really, really benefit from higher interest rates and how high they've been lately, okay? So here's some things that I want you to keep in mind, okay, before we wrap this up. So first, the year-over-year comparisons are tough on these stocks. Okay, we're talking 2021 Q2 versus 2022 Q2. There's always these year-over-year comparisons, and they're not going to look good. But when you think about it, stocks also do not look good versus to Q2 2021. So it could be that these stocks already priced this in and you do not know it yet. So it's going to be very important that you find out how these stocks are going to react after they report their earnings, especially if they're bad. If the earnings are misses, right, then it means the estimates were too high and the stock price being down 50, 60, 70% already took that into consideration, okay? And this is what I'm talking about here. Most stocks have already moved significantly to the downside, and we're talking about, will stock go down based on these factors, on negative guidance, on bad EPS and revenue misses, okay? But at the end of the day, don't focus on the short-term action of a stock. Take lower prices for what they are, which are less risky stocks. Whenever a stock goes down, it means your stock is less risky than before. When it goes up, it means it's more risky than before. Okay, so that'll be it for today, guys. As usual, let me know if you guys have any questions, anything about the markets, anything about earnings, anything that I can help you with in the future, okay? And remember to look me up on Instagram, on Twitter, also at a Stark Gladiators Discord, okay? Thanks. Bye.